real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Romas with you. Today, I have President Brian Sauve from the National Police Federation on the show as they celebrate 5 years as the bargaining agent for the RCMP membership. So welcome, Brian.
Oh, good afternoon, Nathan. Or I guess may still be morning for you.
Yeah, we're just hit afternoon.
Yeah.
So
there we go.
I know I never know where people are going to be when I record these things. So I always have to specify it's mountain time, like whatever times I send, because people are like all over the world. So but just hit the afternoon.
Cool.
Yeah, no, you know what? 5 years. It's going by quick. It feels fast for me. I don't know. How's it feeling for you guys on that end of things?
Time flies, even if I just think back to 2019, obviously, kind of overnight, we got that decision from the board that dismissed the constitutional challenge of the Quebec Association. They had already held the certification vote in November, December the year before, 2018, but they sealed the ballots until they decided on that challenge. Then they counted the ballots, and basically, I think it was a 97 or 98% certification in favor of us. And overnight, we just became this massive union.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here we are 5 years later, 2 collective agreements in, 70-ish staff. We've just had re-elections for our full-time board. We've grown to, I think, almost 120, give or take, local area representatives or shop stewards, if you will. And, we just had another election to fill some vacancies there. And there's just so much that's gone on in the last 5 years that,
Well, you know what? You guys have been doing some pretty cool work. When I was looking through some of the accomplishments that you've had, it almost seems like every year you have some big thing that comes out. So best of luck of keeping up that track. But one of the cool things I was looking at on here was with your book. So celebrating the RCMP's 150th anniversary, the NPF published the Why We Serve book. And that was it. It's listed as a bestseller on Amazon, Toronto Star, and Globe and Mail. So, yeah, quite the accomplishment. Kind of what's the follow from that? I imagine there's some interviews and other things going on. Have any of those members been on anything?
Well, those members shared their stories with us. And I mean, the idea behind the book was, the RCMP celebrated its 150th anniversary from May last year to May this year. That was the 150th year.
Mm-hmm.
The previous year, actually, probably going back to early 2000, I lose track of years.
2022.
Early 2022,
yeah.
Right? Was talking with the commissioner about, so what are you guys going to do? Is there something we can do together? Can we, do some kind of big thing? I know the RCMP did a whole bunch of stuff. Our communications team and our staff were a little frustrated, if you will, at the pace and the direction that the RCMP wanted to go. So we just decided to do our own thing in addition to supporting what the RCMP did. And that was, well, let's showcase not the last 150 years, but let's showcase 150 stories of members today in the RCMP and what their stories are, to really show the diversity, the growth, the evolution, the special areas of service, some of the stories, some of the file work, some of the stuff all across the country. And I'm amazed, like those members, we had probably 400 different stories to filter through and pick the best 150 of them and then get them all down to like one patient size, so they have some input and some impact, and it's been a really, really well received. Like you said, from a sales perspective, bestsellers on a number of different platforms. I know it's a really good item to pass along to a local politician, whether it's a premier or minister of public safety or even a mayor or reeve or something to that effect, who appreciates the good side of the RCMP, and that's part of a union's job. Really, is to advocate for the professionalism and the service delivery that its members bring. And this book, as well as a lot of the videos that we've done, are designed just to do that. So,
Yeah. Well, and combined with like, so I see lots of the stuff on Instagram and a few other social media platforms. Like you guys got it all pretty well covered. With putting the stories out there, is there any kind of future plans? Like maybe because you got all those other stories that are there.
mhm.
This is something that I was wondering, just in like a course that I was running here, where we put some veterans in front of students and they wrote out their stories. I was like, well, what could we do with the other people who have stories? That's something I've been kind of thinking about. But is there something like maybe another book in the future or some other medium of putting it out there?
Well, we the obviously the actual hardcover book is the titled "Why We Serve," stories of 150 RCMP members. But we also did a video campaign called "Why We Serve," and we've actually just wrapped up filming. There's going to be a premiere and a launch this fall of version 2
Okay.
uh, of that. Kind of a bigger budget. Why we serve different scenarios of stuff. So it's not specifically member stories, but it's like let's talk about a file in federal policing that can be explained in a 90-second video.
Yeah.
So it's actually really kind of interesting and fun to do. We're doing internally with our membership. I know they're doing some video canvassing and stories of um, were you a field trainer? What's your best story about being a field trainer and molding new recruits out of depot? Or did you have a really good field trainer, and tell us that story? And why is it important to have someone who's a good field trainer? And what's the attraction to being a field training officer? There's a couple others ongoing. I mean, we've got some underwater recovery videos. We've got a nice long one about dog services and
Mm.
how to build a police service dog. We just did a week of filming at Depot in Regina on all the facets of what cadets go through. So there's going to be probably a 30 to 40-minute video about that, and we'll parse it down to different sections about how they make a Mountie. Um, so lots of stuff in the works, in
Yeah.
the hopper. Yeah, got to keep busy.
They were just at Depot filming.
Yeah, it was middle of July, if
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not mistaken. Yeah, late July or early July, some this year. They just spent a week there. Yeah.
I was just wondering because well, we have a guy from that was actually from my team here with the gang suppression team who just jumped to the RCMP. So I was like, oh,
Okay.
well, he's in the experienced officer program. So it's like I might have to watch out because he didn't tell us he'd be in a video, but he just got there, so he won't be in it.
Oh,
Yeah. So a few other things that you guys have had on the go that I'm actually really curious about is the Member Services Center.
yep.
So you've had this going since March of 2021. It's an all day, every day. It's available to members across Canada and internationally.
Mhm.
So can you tell us a bit about this service center? Because I don't think we've ever focused on it that I can recall from the times you've been on here. We might have mentioned it, but yeah, if you could kind of give us a little more depth on what exactly they do there.
Well, they are essentially the pointy end of our spear, if you will. Cops, they don't work 8 till 4 Monday to Friday. The majority of them, they have afternoon shifts, evening shifts, weekends, holidays, all of that great stuff. Now, obviously, the NPF has a whole bunch of staff. I can't expect or have the capacity for staff to work 24/7, 365 like police do. So,
Mm,
um, there are instances where members need immediate assistance, and we've got that hotline to go directly to someone and deploy resources. But if someone is seeking lower level inquiries or information,
okay.
so my unit commander denied my overtime. Here's the situation. Explain to me what to do next. They can call, they can email, or they can. Um, I don't know if we're at the Facebook messaging yet, but we're thinking about going there. Into our member service center, which runs 24/7, 365. We got a staff that are really well trained in those lower level inquiries. and how to assign them to our full-time staff, whether it's a labor relations officer, whether we need a lawyer's lens on something, and then deploy resources as need be. And one of the challenges our membership have is bandwidth. So across the north, you don't necessarily always have the internet bandwidth to be able to watch an educational video on a collective agreement article or interpretation.
Yeah.
So sometimes picking up the phone, calling, and getting an email or a phone call back is the way to go. But at the same time, having someone available, and they've been wildly successful. I would say over 5 years, probably 65 to 70,000 inquiries coming into them.
Wow.
Whether it's just a simple, how do I reset my password on the NPF webpage, or when am I going to get my retro pay for the new collective agreement, right? Or I just got served discipline papers. Where do I go next? So all of those things, and it allows us to triage and move things forward.
Some of the questions that you mentioned there are funny because, like the retro pay one, I just think every time we get our, told we're going to get retro pay, all of a sudden everybody acts like they're the poorest person on the planet. And then, I need the retro right now. It's like, if it's coming to you at some point, but it's just
Yep.
funny. Um, So yeah, maybe I'll kind of list off a few other achievements that you guys have had. So the Benevolent Foundation, so the NPF Benevolent Foundation, spring of 2020, is granted status as a registered charity in Canada. I've seen a few posts about that. I'll also put a link in the episode description for that because I think people should check that out. Doing awesome work. In May of 2021, NPF achieved standing in the Nova Scotia Mass Casualty Commission, a first for a union, likely. I don't know
Hmm.
if any other unions doing that. You also had, what was it here? 2021 is when you launched some of the regional advocacy campaigns. So the Keep Alberta RCMP, Surrey's Say on Policing, and our Nova Scotia RCMP. Maybe if we could dive into a few of those campaigns just to talk about kind of where they're at and what these advocacy pieces look like. I know you've got so you got three listed here, but I mean, it's kind of like fighting a different battle in every single province because they all got their own thoughts about what they're doing with law enforcement. I'm just wondering, can you talk a bit about those campaigns, how they're going, um, anyone in particular that you really want to focus on? Feel free, but then we'll kind of maybe segue a little bit into some of the contract policing.
Yeah, well, most of those campaigns, they evolve or they start based on politics of the day. So, for example, the Surrey Say on Policing was the idea of the transition movement to a Surrey Police Service, which is carrying on towards November of this year. But it was a bit of a grassroots campaign and you see it a lot in elections now, is fact checking.
Yeah.
So what we were seeing is unfortunately different politicians or different media personalities were passing out erroneous information to the public on whatever the platform might be. And Alberta's another example. Saskatchewan and the Marshal Service is another example. Nova Scotia was really to support the membership through it's ongoing right now, the Nova Scotia Policing Review for the province as a whole as a result of the mass casualty recommendations. So we want to be purveyors, and you see it in a lot of our mission statements, is we're evidence driven and fact based.
Hmm.
Not every solution for a police union should be more cops equals safer streets. Sometimes it means homelessness advocacy. Sometimes it means vocational training. Sometimes it means bail reform, right?
Yeah.
But it's not always more cops equals safer streets. Could be a societal problem. So with Surrey, and that campaign has now evolved into the BC RCMP one as we move forward to a more provincial campaign with the BC election coming up this fall. And Alberta, um, you know, the statements made by different politicians can sometimes be misguided or need to be actually fact checked. So, for example, we have a media release. So happy to share it with you. I think it's going out today or tomorrow about the latest poll results in Alberta. Right, we hire independent polling firms, and we do sample sizes that are, plus or minus 2% accurate. And we ask a whole bunch of questions, like, how satisfied are you with your policing? If you're in an RCMP jurisdiction, click here. If you're not, click here, and then we can tell if they're in Calgary or Edmonton if they're happy with CPS or EPS or Lethbridge. And you can throw in some political stuff. Are you interested in moving away from the RCMP, or if not, what do you think their priorities should be?
Mm.
And that really guides how we deal with government, but also can provide information for us to tell a minister, well, actually, you're wrong.
Mhm.
The people and the taxpayers and the voters are telling us this, and here's the data to support it. So that's kind of where a lot of those campaigns go and at the same time, there was some comments about from the premier in Alberta about the number of positions that are vacant and that they pay for all of them. Well, actually, when you fact check it and you look into the provincial police services agreement, positions that are um, not filled, the province doesn't pay for.
Okay.
So, you can go back to the premier. We did write them back, and we basically said, "Hey, you're misleading the public by saying this. So please provide accurate information, and go from there." So,
That's one thing. I've had a bunch of politicians on the show, right from municipal up to federal, and they all do a really good job in like their field. But some of the statements that they make, you can tell as a person that's like maybe more at ground level or integrated into like speaking to people at the ground level. You're like, yeah, your statement is correct from a 30,000-foot view, but
yeah.
maybe not when you actually get into the nitty gritty, the details of stuff. It's like, yeah, maybe you pay for it, but in this one circumstance, you're actually not paying for it. So yeah, I find they just maybe it's political speak. Maybe they're too used to talking a certain way, but they just give like very vague generalities. And you're like, well, that's not quite right. You're missing the nuance to this, or, whatever the case might be. So, yeah, I think you make a really good point there.
See, an interesting case in point there is, everybody remembers George Floyd, May 2020. The narrative driven by politicians and different media outlets in Canada was that Canadians had lost confidence in their police, and
Hmm.
that trust was shattered. And you even had a lot of police leaders using language like rebuild trust. Well, in June 2020, and we had already planned this. It wasn't tactically as a result of George Floyd. The machinations were already in work. We did pan Canadian polling about confidence in policing across Canada. It was pretty damn high.
Yeah.
It was in the 73 to 78 percentile in June of 2020, a month after George Floyd has happened, amidst all of the protests and all that great stuff. And then you get into September 2020, because we do about 4 a year. It had gone up again.
Mm.
So confidence in unfortunately, like, our members, all cops, suffer from that media and political driven narrative that is what they see on the news every night, CBC, Global, whatever you watch, and that's unfortunate. So someone really has to actually throw out the true stuff. What this is actually what Canadians think of you, and yeah, we were up to I think by mid 2021, it was like 80 to 82% confidence in police.
Hmm.
So like that has just grown. So do you still have to rebuild trust, or do you capitalize and improve on the trust that's already there? And that language matters, right?
Yeah. I think we took way too many of the narratives from the US and just overlaid them
Yep.
right over top of Canadian policing. And it was like, you don't have the same race relations. We don't have all the same issues as down there. Like we're having protests in Edmonton from BLM groups at that time.
Mhm.
And there'd never been a black person that was killed by the Edmonton Police Service at that time. They're like, okay. And then narratives change and goes way out. But yeah, it's like we need someone to put the truth out there. It's just, I find it's very hard to get the airtime on those big platforms like, CBC or CTV, which are, I guess, are still capturing most of the people. And then further on social media, how do you manipulate the algorithms to put you up there instead of somebody else who's given their false info? So you almost need like a
Yeah,
whole team working on algorithms. But yeah,
for sure.
the just kind of staying on this topic, I like a point that you made though. Not always more cops means it doesn't equate to safer streets. Uh, do you have any kind of insight into this? And this is something I was actually saying I'm going to ask the chief when he's on next. Our chief, just what? Why does that seem to always be a narrative out there that like more cops, we want more cops. This is going to equate to the whole boots on the ground, safer. It's like I don't think that's true. But do you know where that comes from or why? Is it something like is there some other reason or background thing going on that they always want more members?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I'll never turn down an offer to put more boots on the ground, right? I think that's a fantastic thing. And I think most police services across the country today are still suffering because um, we are the last first responder standing, if you
Mhm.
will. And that more from a decade or more of um, health services budgets being cut and that being passed on to the police, mental health and addictions budgets being cut and that being passed on to the police,
Mm.
homelessness issues, affordability issues, whether it is um, liberal and not liberal party, just the word liberal, liberal interpretation of bail issues and people being this becoming this revolving door of justice, which gets passed on to the police, cuts to probation, cuts to parole systems, all of those things. And through the COVID pandemic, they weren't putting people in pretrial custody or actually sentencing them to jail because they didn't want.
And they were letting them out. They were just opening the doors.
Yeah, and they were letting them out because they didn't want those massive congestion of people to create super spreader events inside
Yeah.
a facility. So it's like, well, let's just disperse them amongst the Canadian public to whatever, and but did you actually have the resource? So all of that has been the ever increasing mandate of policing, and is dealing with all of these societal problems that nobody really seems to accept.
Hmm.
We need to have vocational training for people who finish their custodial sentences so that they can get a job, get a house, and become a productive member of society. So, like, there's all of those other things
Hmm.
that need to be funded to take away from the mandate of the police. But if you continue, and I don't think I met one cop that will turn away that increasing mandate because they signed up to serve and they have this ever uh, um, just commitment to their Canadians and their Canadian counterparts to do better and make better. So if you continue along the road that we're just not going to fix society's problems, then the solution is, yeah, you're going to need more cops.
Yeah.
You're going to need a lot more cops. So you got to pay for it there, or you think of paying for it in other places. Like let's talk about homelessness. Let's talk about addictions. Let's talk about mental health and those types of things. That's one of the reasons all those mental health cars have been so successful, right? It is a different approach to just leaving 911 for psychotic crises to a full team of police officers where you
Yeah.
have that combined, where social services worker, psych nurse, whatever it might be, is going with lethal overwatch to a call to deal with something that might be out of their realm. New Zealand has done a fantastic job with their approach on that. They actually have like a like a Ram 1500 minivan that's got a fire guy, a nurse, a psych nurse, a police officer, and a paramedic, and they just ride around together and they go to calls
Very cool.
and solve problems. So
You know, I that's a really good perspective to have too, because my thought was, instead of hiring, I don't know, and the math won't equate here, but it's just as an example. Instead of hiring 10 cops, if I could buy this new program that types the reports, through AI for the rest of the service, or I buy a helicopter instead of X amount of cops, because when we get in a criminal flight, car chase, that helicopter is worth like almost 10 cars just driving around aimlessly on the ground and
Yep.
potential collisions and stuff. So it's like, how do we work smarter, not harder, kind of? But 100% to your point, that makes sense. Is like, we need the boots because we've picked up the slack for a lot of services, and nobody wants to work overnight, I guess. So we're the only ones out there.
Well, the NYPD just launched a drone program. Where you call 911 311 in New York, you may have a drone show up as your first responder.
Wow.
That'll be interesting to see. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so leveraging technology, can you figure it out? There is some fantastic stuff out there, and yeah, like you said, a software. Like, I still think in terms of people, but if our members could, pass over their notes or whatever to
Hmm.
a steno who can basically write the reports for them, or if that can be done leveraging technology, it gets them back out on the street to be more proactive in the community.
Yeah, there was,
So
maybe it was Lethbridge Police or Calgary. Somebody I saw recently was using their phone to type their notes, and then it like just took that and put it straight into their report or something. And I was like, "That's awesome," because I
yeah.
still write in paper, and it's just different. Um, Speaking of which, so for the contract stuff, I wonder if you could give a little bit of clarity around where any of these contracts sit, like with the RCMP. Are they, and maybe I'll preface this question with, um, it seems like every week some person in government is putting out a different statement on, we're moving away from it, or like they give a real generality, some vague stuff like, well, we'll still engage with, have the RCMP engage with communities that want them, but everyone else, like, we're going to support a municipal service. So, do you have any clarity for the membership out there? Like, where are the RCMP on this whole federal mandate? What does the contract situation look like? Because I think they're due in 2032
2032, yeah.
was when I
Yeah.
looked it up. So just, where does everything stand as of right now?
I can't predict what different premiers or governments of the day will look to do 8 years down the road. Actually, it wouldn't even be 8 years. They have already begun the process of engaging with communities and contracting partners for the 2032 renewal.
Hmm.
What I can say is communication is key here, and the current federal government, I wish they had done it a year ago, but they did do it in May of this year, or April, I guess, end of April, which was appreciated. Where the minister, LeBlanc, actually wrote to every premier across the country, basically saying, um, we support contract policing. We're here and we will be here, should you want us. And we've just received funding because they did just get an extra 20 or $30 million in Public Safety Canada's portfolio to start the discussion about the renewal of those contracts post 2032.
Okay.
So I know there's a commitment from Public Safety Canada to carry on with contract policing for any contracting partner that wants them. I know from the commissioner's perspective, they have three business lines, and he said it a number of times. We have three business lines, federal policing, contract policing, and specialized police services, or support police, specialized support services. And we will continue to do those until told differently. I know there's a massive push. It's a national priority for the RCMP on recruiting, twofold, federal and contract. And they've got a lot of applicants, a lot of interested Canadians looking at coming into the RCMP.
Hmm.
We're still working on the RCMP on how they can deal with that massive influx of applicants, because obviously it has been a year and a half now where their support staff is maybe not as big as it should be when you get 16 to 18,000 applicants in a year.
Yeah.
So they probably need more and more support to be able to deal with all those applicants in a timely manner, to be able to get enough kids out to depot. Federal policing, in that same letter from Minister LeBlanc, he announced the creation of this new secretariat in public safety. I've met with them twice already, and it's been a discussion for about 2 years now about what the future of federal policing looks like. So, in my opinion, if you have enough kids in the Olympic-sized pool, you can fill all of your vacancies, whether they be federal uniform specialized policing services. The crunch that they're under is that there's a lot of vacancies in protective, threats to parliamentarians, and all of that great stuff. So, a bit
Mm.
behind the gun right now about getting those jobs filled. So, how do we look at the NPF and the RCMP and Public Safety Canada, um, improving federal policing? Do we modernize the training portfolio at depot? So if you grew up in wherever Canada and you've always wanted to guard the prime minister, like that's your life dream, and do we have to give you all the tools at training to be a cop in Saskatchewan?
Hmm. Okay.
Or can we give you the base level of policing knowledge and then specialize your training right away to be a protective police officer?
Yeah.
So those are the discussions that are happening right now. So would they end up shrinking the depot curriculum for federal direct entry type applicants, and then moving on to a specialized curriculum, maybe somewhere in BC or somewhere in Montreal or wherever they're going to be posted? And then let's say they spend 5 years guarding, I don't know, the Prime Minister's protective detail, or the Governor General, the Supreme Court, or something to that effect. And they're like, yeah, I really want to try something different. Then you have to have a conversion program.
Yeah.
So how do we get you to where a normal cadet graduating from depot, knowing all of that other stuff, was when they first got out? So it's the two sides,
Hmm.
and that's where it's at. So long answer is that the finally the government of Canada has committed to contract policing in the long term, and they've got funding to start those negotiations. And I know they have started those discussions. And also with federal policing, they're looking at different ways of slicing that pie to improve our ability to meet on that mandate.
Okay. Yeah. And the reason I think that all this stuff is kind of interesting is just when we had the provincial election here, was it last year? Just coming up, and on the lead up to it, it was hot and heavy on provincial policing. Like it was all the time. You hear about it all the time. Um, I was told there were plans in place already for certain things to be done, and then like once the election was done, it just kind of vanished, and I don't hear about it anymore. I feel like I'm still looking at the same news sources, so it's just like it's not coming up. Is there any one place in particular that you think is uh, more ahead or pushing the strongest, I guess, for the switch to provincial police? Is there anyone in particular?
No, I haven't seen. I mean, in British Columbia, they well, in 2022, they committed almost $250 million to the RCMP for not extra positions, but previously frozen positions. So the RCMP has been staffing those, getting them up. Was another 277 bodies. So they're almost up to, probably by the end of this year, they'll be at the um, establishment that they were allowed to be at in 2012. So fully staffed.
Okay.
Alberta is similar, right? Sorry, Saskatchewan is similar. They just I think in April this year, authorized the commanding officer there to fill up to for maximum complement. So the next another year, year and a half, because it's a dimmer switch to build cops, not a light switch.
Yeah.
I Saskatchewan will probably be up to where they're fully staffed. Manitoba, I know we've been having some discussions about prioritizing Manitoba, and the commissioners authorized Manitoba to be a priority to be staffed. So if you're applying out of Manitoba, you can go back to Manitoba. If you're in Saskatchewan and you have family in Manitoba, you can go to Manitoba. If you're in wherever, they will
Mm.
prioritize your movement. Um, the Atlantic provinces very similarly. The RCMP just early last year implemented pre-posting agreements for cadets going to depot.
Okay.
So if you grow up in New Minas, Nova Scotia, and you want to come back to Nova Scotia, they will do just about everything they can to get you there out of after graduation.
Wow.
So that was a bit of a game changer for cadets, versus having to go to Thompson, Manitoba for 5 years, and then maybe up to Nunavut for 2 years, and then maybe get down to Nova Scotia. So that's been a plus. I don't see. I mean, again, I don't know what politicians are thinking. Saskatchewan is working on a marshal service. Don't really know what they're going to be doing yet. Alberta's passed legislation for this new independent police agency. Don't know what that's going to look like. Um, but I don't really see anybody moving on it.
Yeah.
And like in Alberta, for example, like the Alberta RCMP, about 1,800, 1,900 police officers plus support staff is probably close to 3,000 people. Um, it would take you a while if you wanted to flip that switch to build that capacity when you think of infrastructure and everything that you have to do. So
Hmm.
if someone's going to do it, right, it's $1 billion venture.
And that's kind of what I wonder is like, they come up with this narrative, like it sounded like it was pretty much going to happen, and then just maybe they kind of go, they see what it'll actually entail the work, and they're like, oh, okay, like this is going to be a 10-year project, like so maybe it's not something we're going to prioritize because they work in election cycles, right? So,
But it's also, I mean, I appreciate, my obviously my communications with Premier Smith and Minister Ellis are maybe a little more fact driven and trying to get them back on the right evidence side.
mhm,
But I appreciate the fact that they, call out the RCMP in public, because that gives me an avenue to sit back and say, you guys need to do better filling the jobs that are already funded, which comes back to that discussion about lots of applicants, but we have this backlog
yeah,
at the processing, and how can they do that better, right? Our proactive recruiters who are members are going around doing tours. Like, they're doing fantastic. Like, I've seen the numbers from Alberta, like 200 applicants a month, and the majority of them want to come back to Alberta. It's like, okay, so what's stopping them from getting to Depot and back to Whitecourt or Olds or Milk
mhm.
River or whatever? So
What, I don't know if you have the numbers off the top of your head, but for the experienced officer side, what does that look like right now? Like, are you seeing more people coming in than leaving for other services, or do you have kind of a gauge on that?
yeah, I think it's up to since January 2022, so about 2.5 years now. It's a little under 700 that have come in
Okay.
across the country, and I don't know how many have gone out, but we're talking, yeah, 100 maybe.
Yeah.
Like, what we have seen is, and I'm not saying we're taking just 700 from the OPP or Calgary or Edmonton or Vancouver, but a lot of those 700 are actually members of the RCMP who were underpaid for a long time and went over to VPD or Calgary or whatever because the salary and whatever was better. And then once we caught up, it's like, ooh,
Mhm.
you're an attractive. So they remounted after 2 or 3 years of experience elsewhere. That's been the majority, the glut of those experienced police officers coming back. And the vacancies in federal policing has helped. because if you're a member of the RCMP with 10 years experience in Thompson and you can't get to a federal unit in Ontario, you might take a job with Durham,
Okay.
and then I don't know, three years later, it's looking really good back at the RCMP, and they're willing to take you over from Durham and keep you in the Toronto area.
Yeah. Yeah, I wondered too when like talking to some of the people that have jumped from Edmonton to the RCMP, and it's like, well, if they guarantee you, okay, we'll put you in a federal position, uh, you know, how does the membership, the current RCMP membership, like those 5-year members, 10-year members who've been on the road the whole time, and they're trying to get into a federal spot? It's like, well, that person just came from another service, and we're just going to put them in there, whatever their background might be. So, are there some issues around that?
100%. And that's where obviously we saw that come. Excuse me. We saw that coming. It's similar to the idea of pre-posting agreements for cadets coming out of depot that
Yeah,
want to go back to BC, or they want to go to PEI, which is a more desirable location and only has 116 jobs. Um, there are members who have been working for 5, 10, 15, 20 years that have been trying to get to different places in Canada, and now all of a sudden, wait, so a cadet or a newly engaged member is going to take my spot. Similarly with federal, right? Protective policing or national security or child exploitation, any of those sensitive international spots. I call it short-term pain,
hmm,
and I do foresee an end to that. So when you talk about resourcing challenges from federal or from contract, you can only bypass the right thing to do for so long.
yeah,
And the right thing to do is to support those who have been working and keeping the ship afloat for the last 10 to 15 years. You can only bypass that for so long until those members have had enough. And we're probably getting to a point, maybe late this year, early next year, where the RCMP, back to applicants and all that great stuff, has had ample opportunity to pump out 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 newly engaged members um, into the contract world or into the federal world, and release those who have been holding the ship afloat. So I think you might see the EPO laterals start to wane off because those offers of staying in major geographic centers might dry up.
yeah. Okay. No, very interesting. A lot of issues to
Yeah.
deal with, and like, you know what? A lot of people always equate the RCMP to the FBI, and I think that doesn't even do the RCMP justice, because the RCMP also does like roles of DEA and Homeland and like all these other places or services. Is such a big organization. I've had a few people reach out recently too, just through like social media and different places, and they'll say, I've put my application in for the RCMP or and a municipal service at the same time. This one got back to me, but I'm debating, should I wait for the other one? And I always kind of equate it to, like, especially now, since you have the contracts, it's like the pay isn't a huge difference. The benefits, like at the end of the day, it's all kind of a wash. Everybody goes back and forth with bargaining. Someone's hired one time and then the next time is the other one. It's just whether you want, unlimited opportunities of positions, because the RCMP is really going to offer worldwide positions. And but you got to be willing to move. So that's kind of the two things. You can have unlimited on this one end of things, but you got to be willing to move. And if you want to stay grounded and you want to stay in a city, or you really, your whole entire family's in one city and you just want to be there, then take the municipal job. There are hundreds of jobs you can do in a municipal service, but that's essentially what I kind of equate it to. So um, yeah, I thought I've had probably a dozen people ask me that now, and I don't know, maybe that if you have a better way of explaining it, you could let me know. But that's kind of what I equate it to. I don't. Is there anything else that you think maybe would be a standout for the RCMP in that respect?
Well, the advantage, and that might, knock on wood, that might change in about 3 months, depending what the fall economic statement says from the federal government. Um, so, one advantage to going municipal is almost everywhere in the municipal world, you become a member on day one of your training.
Okay.
Right, you're
Hmm.
on salary, you're earning pensionable time for the whole time that you're learning the job, and for us, that's 6 months at depot. Right now, our cadets, they're just students. They get an allowance. It's not pensionable time for those 6 months. So there's an immediate short-term advantage to going in a muni or provincial police service is that you get an extra 6 months pensionable service right there. But also the dollar figure, right? Most municipal or provincial police services, while in training, you're bringing in about 12, anywhere from 1,100 to 1,500 bucks every week,
Okay. Yep.
right? That allowance that our cadets get paid is only 500.
Wow, it was $500 when I went through in 2011.
Yeah, exactly. We've been working with the federal government, the RCMP, on that to bring it up to something that's more reasonable, knowing that we don't represent cadets, but it would make an impact because the average cadet today is 28, 29 years old. They come with family, they come with baggage, they
Hmm.
might have a house mortgage, right? All that great stuff. So if you want to attract the best and the brightest, you kind of have to have something that's going to get
Okay.
them there, and a lot of them pay the bill. So hopefully something like that changes. We asked for it to be moved up to 1,250. I know the commissioner's supportive of it. The minister's supportive of it. It's just a matter of whether or not Treasury Board will actually do it this November. So that could be a wash, but right now you still have advantage, municipal or provincial. Um, Pensions are almost the same, right? You know, benefits depends where you go. They're generally similar across the board, um, but yeah, mobility is the key. And I've talked to members who have gone north and never left because they fall in love with the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think like in the Yukon and the Northwest Territories, almost three-quarters of the members that go there retire there. Like they just stay.
Wow.
Um, and similarly, different, little bit of a different style of policing, right? Working in, um, uh, you know, uh, Bangladesh, Alberta, is going to be different than working in Calgary
Yeah.
downtown, right? Similarly, like Cold Lake or Moosomin in Saskatchewan or Milk River, it's a little different. You might not be open 24/7. You might only be open 20 hours a day or 18 hours a day, and you might be on call. So there's that lifestyle component. We have a lot of great posts. I mean, I spent a lot of time before my RCMP days in southern Alberta and Lethbridge, Milk River, Calgary, and all that great stuff. And there's a lot of really good spots, like working in and around Pincher Creek, Fort McLeod, through that Crow's Nest corridor. Like, talk about
Yeah.
gorgeous country.
And you know what? I even the international posts though, like you guys do
Yep.
the some of the peacekeeping stuff and like training with other
Mhm.
countries, and that's an incredible opportunity. So
Yeah, well, the peacekeeping is open to municipal, right? So, it's United Nations peacekeeping that's downloaded to the RCMP to administer from a policing perspective. But they also bring in, so it's not all RCMP. Like they'll bring in Montreal police officers, Toronto, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, and they'll create a mixed unit to go over to whether I don't know Bosnia or Serbia or
mhm,
Jerusalem, whatever, to do peacekeeping. Usually the training components. Sometimes it's mixed, but usually it's mostly RCMP. Like we were the guys over in the Ukraine before the war fully kicked off, training their police on a whole bunch of stuff. But there's also international deployments, right, which are permanent in nature. Like you could be the liaison officer in Ankara, Turkey,
yeah,
for 3 to 5 years, where you deal with the FBI, you deal with the Police Nationale in France, you deal with the Garda in Ireland or the RCMP in Canada for transnational organized crime and stuff like that that goes through Turkey. So interesting stuff,
Yeah,
just yeah, different. So yeah.
very cool. As we just come up to the end of the time here, yeah, I just wanted to see if there's anything kind of coming down the pipe. What's the next big project for you, or what's going on?
Well, there's a lot going on. I mean, obviously, we're researching and preparing now for bargaining round three because the this contract will expire at the end of March next year. So we'll probably be um, moving into bargaining mode come January, February next year, and see where that goes. Obviously, there's a constant with respect to our government relations and advocacy stuff. We go to probably 20 to 24 different um, local events, right? Like the Alberta Union of Municipal Associations or Saskatchewan Urban Municipal Associations conferences where mayors, reeves, and councillors get together and we talk to the local politicians. So that's ongoing. There's an election happening in Saskatchewan this fall. There's one happening in
Hmm.
BC this fall. There's one happening in New Brunswick this fall. Nova Scotia is next spring. Those are all provincial elections. So, we'll have a role to play there. We're nonpartisan, but we will be talking to all the parties to get their position statements and share that publicly and with our members to show them how to vote. And then next year, obviously, we'll probably have a federal election,
Yeah.
so we'll see where that goes. And
And then everything could change all again, and you're back to square one.
Oh yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff happening within the RCMP. They finished. They're doing their selection of the new service pistol. So how's that rollout going to happen in December, January, February this year? Looks like the uniform shirts are finally going to be modernized with a new color and a new option.
Nice.
There's some changes to duty belts going on with ergonomics. I'm trying to convince the commissioner that we should have a joint partnership in engaging Canadian communities about what an RCMP cruiser should look like, in
Okay. Yeah.
2026. So that red, blue, and yellow on white been around forever,
Yeah.
right? It's stale. Like let's shake it up a bit. Let's put something new out there. So a whole bunch of stuff, and of course this year now, come September is the kickoff of the 50th anniversary of women in the RCMP.
Hmm.
So there's some celebratory stuff happening through our social media. I know the RCMP's all over it. There's a dinner for Troop 17 happening at Depot in Regina in September. And there will be a full year of stuff celebrating women in the RCMP, which is just fantastic.
Awesome stuff. You know what? I want to say thanks for being on the show today. And I enjoy working with the National Police Federation. Everyone over there has been fantastic. So if I can help in any way, always feel free to reach out. But yeah, that'll kind of wrap our show for today. So thank you for being on.